Okay, I may have accidentally played the intro thing for too long, but that's because I'm very inexperienced in this seat. But g'day, battlers! I'm PvP Steve, joined by my co-host, Debbie Pebble, aka Small Pebble. Hi, Debbie.
Hi. Yeah, we went a bit long on the intro, but that's all good. Now people can. It's almost like the extended version or
Wow.
Taylor's version, whatever you want to call it, of the intro song.
I mean, with the length going longer, it's like, people preferred the extended versions of the Lord of the Rings movies. So we just figured that people would enjoy the extended edition of the intro music as well. And, just for everyone that was really curious as to what it sounded like after the cutoff, like, where does it go? There you go. We've found the answer. But if I didn't say it before, which I feel like I didn't, welcome to the G'day Battlers podcast episode. I don't remember what number we're up to. Is this like number 11, 12? Something in that ballpark, right?
We've
Maybe.
definitely hit the 11 mark now. I think it was episode 10. It was 2 weeks ago, so there's a lot to recap. There's a lot to go over, and yeah, I am not the right person to keep things on track.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's just this podcast, isn't it? A very significant lack of on trackness, but we'll give it a go because I guess the first thing that sort of happened in the last 2 weeks was last week's regional tournament in Europe, Lille, which I think is the third European regional of the season potentially. And it's sort of keeping up the trend, I think, a little bit with the regionals this season in giving us a couple of sort of very fun Pokemon, slightly off meta, slightly off kilter Pokemon that keep things a little bit exciting. So, Debbie, do you want to talk about some of the stuff that we're sort of seeing over in France?
I'm just gonna talk about Carbink the entire time. I know we mentioned it previously, but I was so excited to see Carbink up there, and um, the fact that it made it to top two in Lille is incredible. And yeah, the go little rock thing, go.
Yeah, I mean that is its best performance to date, right? Like it was barely getting into it wasn't getting into the top 8 for ages, and then it finally did. I think we talked about it in the previous podcast, and then it's finally sort of got that number 2 slot. So it hasn't gotten a number 1 medal yet. It's working on it, but we'll see how things go. But this is its first time in the top 2 in the grand finals of regional, being piloted by, and I hope I don't butcher this name, Elip Fend Flash.
It's pretty
Who
good.
is
It's
running.
pretty good.
I think I did okay.
You did real.
It is. I believe they're a German trainer, and we have had trouble with German pronunciation in earlier episodes as well. So maybe we're learning. But they ran sort of a team that's a little bit of an amalgamation of obviously the big meta kingpin Metacham that was on all 8 teams in this top 8. But then also bringing in things like Frostlass, which has sort of stayed around relatively similar usage for the last couple. I think it's on just over or just about half of teams in this top 8, alongside bringing in the Mandibuzz, who I feel like Dunebug sort of popularized the Mandibuzz pick in the previous regional the week before, and also running the Shadow Venusaur as the grass type instead of the Superior, which is interesting in this one because all 7 other trainers in the top 8 ran Superior. This was the one and only Venusaur, and I don't know, maybe it pairs well with Carbink.
Yeah. Yeah, Carbink, yeah. Oh, sorry, were we talking about other months? I'm still in the Carbink land.
What could we expect with Debbie on the mic? Obviously, this big shout out to the fairies. Although, admittedly, there's not actually a lot of fairy typing in this top 8. In fact, it's entirely possible that is the only fairy type in the top 8, which is something of note, I guess. But hey, it got all the way to the second place. But maybe, Debbie, the reason that it was the only fairy type in the top 8 was because there was one other steel type that has sort of made its very large debut into the top 8 here. Probably my favorite Pokemon that is in the top 8 here, that being Inadequance running Shadow Magnezone. Now, Shadow Magnezone, it just picked up Volt Switch in the last move update. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I feel like it picked it up alongside the entire Magna family, Magnemite and Magneton, both picking it up as well for their respective cups, I suppose. But Inadequance sort of coming in with the Shadow Magnezone pick. really doing a lot of damage with Wild Charge where you can land it. Obviously, it's a little bit dicey when you're up against a Metacham who tends to do a lot of damage with that counter to not only a Steel type, not only a Shadow Steel type, but a Shadow Steel type with a defense that you could probably equate to a Blade of Grass. There's not a lot of bulk on that Shadow Magnezone, so you don't get a lot of farm when you're the Metacham. But interestingly, so I was sort of watching some of Inadequence's battles. He uploaded a bit of a recap on his channel as well as the live stream. You can obviously go and watch back as well. But a Wild Charge from a Shadow Magnezone onto a Metacham does a significant chunk of damage. So definitely a useful Pokemon. I'm not sure if it's exactly going to be the Meta Slayer, the thing that just everyone is going to be using on all of their teams from now on, especially in a relatively Gligar-ish meta. But it's really interesting. And obviously, I think I have a bit of a reputation at this point that is just accurate in that I very much am a fan of when there is a slightly spicy Pokemon on the team and it performs really well. He ended up coming in third, just losing out to the eventual champion in the losers final, Galax Cobolton, who sort of reset the bracket in the grand finals and took it all out up against that Carbink. But yeah, Shadow Magnezone on the map. On the map, stand.
Yeah, something that I did like. If you asked me if like Magnezone would ever be in the top 8, I'd be like, yeah, nah. Like, who would bring that? And in Quants did. So,
oh yeah.
So it was incredible. And being so spicy, and I suppose, yeah, like you said, there's very glassy to use, but a big fun Pokemon to bring, and I'm glad he managed to take it nearly all the way.
Yeah, a really solid effort. He was actually in the winners bracket right down to the top 6, I think. And then he just he actually lost to the champion twice. He lost to him up in the winners bracket, and then he lost again in that losers final. So clearly Carbink, just a Pokemon that he was struggling up against. I'm just going to pretend that it's the Carbink and not actually like the ground type Swampert that was the only Swampert in the top 8 as well. I'm sure it was the Carbink, Debbie. We can believe that.
Yep. Carbink. Power to the Carbink.
And, there was actually a Toxapex in the top 8 as well, which isn't a unique pick in the sense that it's been in the top 8 before, but it is a very rare pick. It is something that does not get a lot of use. It is another one of those ones that people sort of say is going to be this big, scary meta destroyer, and it sort of underwhelmed a little bit in the same boat as Araquanid. But, it's around. It's okay.
Yeah, I would put it in the okay bracket. I mean, it's interesting to see it in a top 8. I think you would definitely have to work your other 5 mons around it. I personally just wouldn't bring it, not because it's a poison type, but because I just think it's a little bit cumbersome to play. It's really slow to get to the moves, and it's also, in my opinion, a little bit ugly to look at. So anyway, I just wouldn't personally bring it.
Debbie is judging her Pokemon based on their look as far as whether they come into their team or not. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to get ready to cancel Debbie right now.
Oh no!
Start the Twitter hashtags. We'll take it down. It's about what's on the inside, Debbie. It's all about
what's in the inside of a Toxapex.
I mean,
poison.
The brine has to come from somewhere, right?
Salt water. Whoa.
Yep. So that's your hill to die on, man. But that was Lil. What's actually a little bit more exciting, not because it's American bias, because we certainly don't have any of that, but because there was a lot more spice in the regional that is currently sort of taking place as we're recording this. So as we tend to do, we're recording sort of after day 1, before day 2 of a regional tournament going on this weekend, and that is the Toronto regional, or Toronto for those who are in the know. But there's a lot of spice in this top 8, Debbie. Like, it's kind of crazy insane. One trainer in particular has really carried the spice torch, and I think there's probably a couple of other trainers who have caught your eye a little bit more. So just to get out of the way, what's really excited you here, Debbie?
Clefable. But firstly, before I get into like my fairy rant, when you said American favoritism or bias, I was like, we're talking about Canadians here. We're on a regional. I
It's
suppose it still
North
counts as North
America.
America. Oh,
Yeah,
is it North
yeah,
America? I don't know. Are we
yeah.
we get some hate mail after this? I'm not sure.
Nah, they count, man. North America. It's
Oh,
all America, baby.
oh,
That's
okay.
why. Like I don't remember what website it was on, but the other day I had to find America on like a list of countries, and I was like, oh, it's under United States, isn't it? And so I had to scroll all the way to the bottom of the list. It's like, it's United States. So I I'm running away with no mistakes here, baby. Woo!
Oh, okay. I mean, on this top 8 list, we do have 2 Americans and the rest are Canadian.
So
Now
that's 8 Americans, all North Americans.
hate mail incoming. Alright, so back to, the Clefable. SS Thorn has brought in a Clefable into their team, which is, I loved look, we're on the Carbink cloud. Now we're on the Clefable cloud. All right. The fact that just bought our little fairy wind friend, and did really really well. So the fact that it's there, I'm stoked.
Yeah, I mean they're currently undefeated, right? Like they are still in the winners bracket. They're just waiting for what's to come, I suppose. They have gone a little bit. Well, I mean they've brought another extra little bit of spice in also having Shadow Dragonair, which
Mm,
I'm not sure how spicy you still get to call Shadow Dragonair because like we've seen it perform really well in tournaments in the past. It did
mm,
incredibly well at EUIC, as many people know last year. So like it is. I mean, maybe it's a Pokemon that is difficult to pilot. It's maybe not a meta Pokemon, but it is one that is used very well in certain trainers' hands. And so they've sort of paired sort of two sides of the coin, the fairy and the dragon, on the one team, and have done really well with it. But the other thing, obviously, staying in the fairy corner here, there are two more Carbings that are in the top 8 here as well, brought in by 610 Hero and EJCC87. Now, these trainers are actually going to be going head to head in the losers bracket tomorrow.
mm.
So, I mean, two things there. One, only one of them is going to get through to the next round, but two, one of them is guaranteed a spot in the top 6. So it's on its way. Uh,
Oh, can you imagine a Carbink mirror? My goodness.
uh, I mean,
I
look,
think that's when you're gonna start putting the laundry on and just.
oh yeah, and look, these trainers not only do they both have Carbink, but they also both have Mandibuzz. So
Oh
you could be
gosh.
looking at like they're bringing the Carbink to counter the Mandibuzz, and then they end up with Mandibuzz mirror followed by a Carbink mirror. I mean, if any matchup is going to end up in a timeout, these guys are sort of ready to go. I think so.
Mhm.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully, I mean, again, the stream will have already happened at this point, but hopefully there wasn't a complete snooze fest going on. But I think the other trainer that I sort of hinted at before, the ultimate Spice Man, is Magmarman26.
Mm,
Magmarman26 is also currently in the winners bracket, ready, like completely undefeated at this point. And in
mhm.
their team, they not only have they brought in Lurantis, which is something that we saw as a spicy pick in an earlier top 8. I don't, in the last podcast, maybe the one before, last episode, I should say. So Lurantis has been around, but they are also
Mhm.
running Mantine. Again, a very rare Pokemon to see in the top 8, but it has appeared before. They also have Emolga in, I have to think, its top 8 debut. Emolga coming in. You don't see a lot of Emolga on the Play Pokemon circuit, Debbie.
No, not at all. So yeah, I'm bringing it like also double flyer. Is not common to bring in the top 8. Was to see in the top 8. My apologies. And yeah, Emolga, it's a friend. It's a friend as well. So very cute. And Debbie gives the tick of approval there.
And that's what every Pokemon strives for. Sometimes it's a little bit more about their looks than anything else, but Emolga has made the cut, the top cut in Debbie's heart. But in line with sort of having that double flyer, obviously, I guess they've gone for a strategy where they are quite strong against Metacham. If you've never seen an acrobatics lands on a Metacham, it does quite a bit of damage, but they've also just ditched Metacham entirely. And not even just in the way that like Wadaj has earlier in the season, where Wadaj didn't bring Metacham and instead brought Defense Deoxys. Magmarman26, the absolute madman 26, has brought no fighting type on their team, just at all. There's no counter anywhere. Now, Lurantis does have access to superpower, so you get a little bit of fighting damage in there, I suppose. But, yeah, look, there's no Metacham. Every other team on the top 8 has Metacham. Almost every team in history in the top 8 has Metacham. But Magmarman coming in the winners bracket, undefeated, no Metacham, Lurantis, Emolga, Mantine. That's, that's a Steve tick of approval right there. That's awesome.
Steve's like, yes, that is, that's your top card. Just the But also, the Shadow Canto Shadow Canto Ninetales and the Shadow Swampert as well, opting to choose that over a normal Swampert, over a Lantern. So yeah, I would love to know what's going on in his mind before going to this regional and just being like, I want to sit down with him and being like, okay, tell me your thought process. Tell me which Pokemon did you start with and build around? Because I can't tell where he started.
That is actually a really good point, because you can imagine Inadequance, maybe he was sort of building this team. It's like, oh, Magnezone kind of fits in here. I haven't thought about Magnezone before now, but let's see how it works. Or go the other way and I want to use Magnezone. Let's build a team from there with meta staples. There's no meta staplage going on here. Maybe Magmarman just really likes that Registeel, and so they built a team. I don't know how you get here. You're completely right. Have they just built a normal looking team and then done it, substituted every Pokemon with one Pokemon that's slightly weirder? I have no idea how you get
we
here.
Send this guy a DM. Can we send in a DM and be like, hey, would you please tell us how you did this and how did you make it work?
Please tell us your secrets. Tell me your secrets. I want to be able to that's the dream. Top 6 with Wailmer, top 6 with this team. Thank you very much. Because that is insane. So look, there's a lot of people that I respect in this top 8, rise to occasion here as well. But if I had to choose one person that I want to win it all, Magmarman, definitely taking the cake here.
I'd love to see that in Worlds. Can you imagine? Oh, it would be incredible. That spice factor so high. It's like chef's kiss.
Yeah. And to be honest, that's there's a lot of criticisms, I guess, of the meta in general of being very closed still. Everyone's using Metacham and Lantern. But this season in particular has really reinvigorated a lot of spicy picks. And the fact that we've sort of seen the meta slightly develop every single regional to be slightly different. In this one, there's literally 5 Mandabuzzers. There were not... It's been a real resurgence of Mandabuzz in a lot of ways. I was going to say, we didn't see a lot at the start. At the start, everyone thought that Mandabuzz was going to be huge. It didn't end up being huge. And then, it just didn't get used. Whereas now, it's actually getting that use case. So it's interesting. I'm really a fan of the meta and where it is. And I'm really looking forward to sort of the rest of the regionals in this season, even 2 months in.
Yeah, the fact that it's only 2 months, we still have a month to go, and we still have a lot to come. Some other Pokemon that may just tilt this meta a little bit. So it's really interesting to see how it will pan out.
But yeah, that's the Play Pokemon circuit, but there is some other sort of competition going around, and one thing that we should probably focus a little bit on, seeing as this is the G'day Battlers podcast, is the Australian competitive scene. And so we talked about it last episode, how there's sort of this Asia-Pacific championship that is starting up across Asia-Pacific, obviously, but essentially it's broken down into smaller regions, and so the Oceanic region, I don't know how that word is so hard to say, by the way. Oceania? I don't know, man.
I don't think it's ever said by an Australian. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's probably true. It's not made for us.
No. We never have to say it. It's
no.
like, oh yeah, the home circuit.
Yeah, it's Australia, and also maybe sometimes New Zealand is invited, but
Why is it
they're
not
like,
oceanic? Why is it Oceania?
I don't know. Even oceanic, is it oceanic? Because it's got an A in it, right? Like oceaniac, or is it? No, it doesn't even. Oh, so yeah, oceanic's way easier.
It
Petition
is
to
way
ditch
easier.
the singular or the Oceania word, please. Thank you.
Just for
Uh,
Steve. Just for
yeah,
Steve.
just I can't say it, and therefore, please help. Thank you. Anyway, what we're actually going to talk about is the O word, the Australia and Friends Championship.
Go on.
That's been sort of going along. Essentially, it's currently the preseason Open Great League, where it's essentially a Swiss tournament, and the sort of it's going to be used to seed the trainers in the Australia and Friends region for the proper season one that I believe will start in December. Now, as we're sort of chugging along, we're currently going into round 4, which call me uneducated here, but going by sort of Swiss numbers rules, it seems like this is going to be the last round. And as we're recording this, there's only a couple battles left to play, including the one at the very top of the tables. So there are currently only 2 battlers left in the tournament that are undefeated.
Hi, editing Debbie here. Correction on what Steve just said. He's noted that there were 2 battlers that had been undefeated. There were actually 4. The other 2 included Inner Bloom and Jai Loves Latinas. Anyway, back to the podcast.
One of them will be going ahead to win this tournament, sort of being number 1 in the Australia and Friends region. And we can actually simplify it a little bit because both of these battlers are from Australia. So we can sort of at least just keep Australia for now, right? Please, Debbie, please.
Yeah.
Phew. Okay, we've got the Debbie seal of approval, so we're all good. So at the top of the tables, we have Rick Flareon versus Accelerant. Now, Rick Flareon is a name that many people have heard for many reasons, especially on this podcast. He won he won the Melbourne Regional in 2022, and then of course qualified again for the World Championships in Sydney Regionals just this April. Went into the World Championships and literally finished top 16 both times. And challenging Rick Flareon is Accelerant, who is a trainer that I knew relatively little about. They didn't really touch the Sylph Arena scene very much. They only played a couple of cups in there. They're from Tasmania, but they've done pretty well so far. So Accelerant sort of come in and actually in the last round took out another one of the world's contenders, Fishy Legs 2. So on a little bit of a streak. And as we sort of describe what's happening here, an important detail is that trainers are able to change their teams every single week. So Accelerant, we can sort of go back and look at some of the history through the tournament, and we can see that Accelerant has been sort of cycling through a lot of different ghost type Pokemon. So in round 2, I believe they were trying out Cofagrigus on their team of 6. In round 3, they moved into a Sableye. In round 4, they've actually moved into using Haunter, which is a very interesting pick in the Open Great League, and was actually something that I was looking at potentially bringing to a future regional. We'll just have to wait and see if the source has been ruined at this point. But Accelerant bringing in some very spicy Pokemon alongside Shadow Ninetales and Samurott, as well as some more standard Azumarill and Superior, and actually Vigoroth as well for a slightly different fighting flavor. But Debbie, the challenger of Accelerant, potentially the sort of favorite to win here. Can you sort of take us through sort of Rick Flareon's, progression or just path through this tournament in particular?
Yeah, definitely can go into Rick's run so far. So in round 1, he versed Jim 2504 in a 3-0 that. Round 2, versed our good friend TJ, Yusei Farrell, with a 2-1. And then in round 3, I believe Jakovic conceded that one. So was just given the 2-0. And during these rounds, he has changed his team throughout. So in round 1, he did bring his current team, but with a Sableye. In round 2, swapping that out for a Charizard, a Shadow Charizard, I should correct. And in round 3, he actually swapped out his that Charizard for a Gligar. So swapping out the flyers through here, and then also changing up that Lickitung for an Umbreon. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes with this possible final round with bringing up Pelipper. So again, changing that Gligar around to another flyer, and also bringing his Lickitung back. So obviously, maybe that Umbreon wasn't so flash against Yakovovich that actually didn't play. So we'll see.
I mean, both Lickitung and Umbreon both happen to match up pretty well up against Haunter. So we'll definitely sort of wait and see what sort of happens here. I unfortunately don't think that Haunter is going to get a ton of play up against Rick Flarion's team, but we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, again, by the time that this podcast comes out, we will actually have a result on that. But essentially, this is just a bit of a preview, I guess, into the Asia Pacific region that is sort of going through. And I think that this will sort of solidify a little bit more once we actually get the proper season starting up, and we'll start to get some Asia Pacific champions to sort of follow along as well. So definitely stay tuned for more of that sort of in the future. But for now, it is very much preseason. It's just sort of figuring things out. The rules are being constructed, and Anacor XIII is doing a pretty good job at sort of putting all of that together, alongside Bamboss, who has been not only a legend in the Australia community for years, but also continuing his legendary streak in putting a lot of the TO action in for this tournament. So shout out to Bamboss as always. But something that sort of comes up with these Open Great League tournaments, and certainly through the Play Pokemon circuit as well, as we were talking about like 5-10 minutes ago, is the spice that is available. And so there's a lot of very interesting new Pokemon to sort of play with. And there's one particular interesting new Pokemon that is set to sort of join the game in the very near future, and that is Clodsire. So certainly a new friend to join the party. I'd say that most people in the PvP community are sort of aware of the dialogue that has been happening around Clodsire, but for those who are a little bit out of the loop, Debbie, you do sort of want to bring everyone up to speed as to what is actually going on at the moment.
Right. So Clodsire is the evolution of Paldean Wooper, I believe. And we do have Community Day coming up. So from this recording, probably be a couple of days before Community Day will be happening. So it has, I suppose, in the Pokemon main game, main series game.
Yeah, main series game, MSG.
Yep.
That's what that is, right?
Nothing, not monosodium glutamate. Okay. And it has a lot of moves that could potentially basically bring Clodsire to the meta. However, we've had this almost Hawlucha effect, I suppose, that we've mentioned previously. So a lot of moves that could have basically made Clodsire almost like undefeatable and just shake up the meta has been taken away before it's even released. So, Steve, if you want to go through the mood sets of like what was originally proposed with Clodsire and then what's now actually been given.
Yeah, so the original moves that Clodsire was supposed to get, and just for context, this is a very bulky Pokemon, poison ground typing, so it's sort of similar to Nidoqueen, but some serious bulk sort of coming in as well. So originally it was set to get 2 fast moves, Mud Shot and Poison Jab, both very good fast moves. And I think a lot of people are sort of leaning more towards that Poison Jab moveset. You do get some stab damage out of that as well. So definitely a very solid move. And then on the charge move front, it was going to have quite a litany of charge moves with Surf, Sludge Bomb, Earthquake, and Stone Edge. So a lot of different coverage moves, a lot of stab moves as well. And Surf paired up with that Poison Jab and potentially Earthquake or Sludge Bomb or Stone Edge. All moveset combinations were viable, but mainly with that Surf being only a 40 energy charge move, very spammy. You can sort of get them out really quickly, and it was going to be a force to be reckoned with. Because if you just imagine a Pokemon that is not only super bulky, but can also get pretty decent moves off really quickly at the same time, that is definitely going to be a meta breaker. So it was actually really set to sort of shake up the play Pokemon meta in a very serious way. You would really have to start focusing in on bringing counters to Clodsire. Clodsire itself would be pushing a lot of other Pokemon out of the meta. And so instead, after a lot of sort of hubbub on Twitter, or X, as I should say, about it being a little bit too strong by certain people, they've sort of come back and they've changed the moveset. They've removed Poison Jab, they've removed Surf, and in their place, they've added Poison Sting, which is essentially a Mudshot clone, except Poison type. And then they've also added in Water Pulse instead of Surf, which is just, it's a lot worse than Surf.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone is going to be running Water Pulse. And I didn't even mention the Community Day move. It's actually going to get Mega Horn, but Mega Horn is not showing up in anyone's conversations about movesets that you would run on Clodsire. So we're kind of just ignoring the Mega Horn here. I guess just as a side note, leave your really, really, really good Clodsire apart. Don't evolve them. Or I guess you can evolve them all anyway and just TM Megahorn off later on if you need to. But, you might only want to have one spare with Megahorn. But anyway, what that sort of meant is that Clodsire, who is destined to be this meta destroying Pokemon, has been been defanged a little bit. And a lot of the dialogue at the moment is that it's still a decent Pokemon. It's still a Pokemon that is going to get used. It'll probably show up in some top 8s, but it isn't going to be the meta dominant force that it could have been with that really spammy Surf moveset. It's going from the cheapest move being 40 energy to the cheapest move being 50 energy in Sludge Bomb, which, is one extra fast move, except Sludge Bomb isn't being used in a lot of the conversations. I'm seeing a lot of people talk about Stone Edge Earthquake, which means that your cheapest move would actually go up all the way to 55 energy, which is another 2 fast moves in addition from the Surf. So, it's not the best. It's an unfortunate situation to be in, where we could have had something very new to sort of shake things up. But I have a bit of a more nuanced take. But where do you sort of stand on everything, Debbie?
Mega Horn Clodsire.
At a regional near you.
Look, I'm a bit sad about, because Clodsire is it's very derpy, it's very bulky. It looks like a friend, as I mentioned. When I played Scarlet, Pokemon Scarlet, I did have a Clodsire in my team, and I named it Friend. So I was very excited that Clodsire was coming into Pokemon Go. And yeah, it would have been great. I think it would have been awesome if it did have that Poison Jab and Surf. But yeah, at the moment, it is what it is, and they have taken that back. So who knows what will happen in the future? We know sometimes with the game that they may run special events down the track, or potentially change some movesets. So we'll see in a few months' time, possibly because we're in the middle of a season. Maybe they don't want to just touch it just yet and want to sit down and reevaluate after the season's over, or just before the next season comes along, and just sit down and fiddle with a few things there. So I wouldn't say write it off just yet. I would still make Great League Clodsires just for the future. But yeah, I think for this next month, I don't foresee that coming into the top 8 at all.
Okay, going down the complete of the path. Like, I'm still giving it some level of respect, but I'm my money's on it showing up in a top 8 somewhere. But I do think that you're sort of on the money in that move updates can always come in the future. We'll have another Go Battle League move update coming on December 1st. And there's always that potential that they give it a buff or even a debuff in the future. You never know. But my more nuanced take, I guess, on Clodsire is sort of coming back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, especially to do with the Toronto regionals, where we're already seeing a lot of different spice come up. And I'm actually seeing, I'm getting a lot of enjoyment from seeing the teams that are succeeding in the meta at the moment. And it's not just, oh, I'm glad that these teams look different than the last season. I'm glad that it isn't Noctowl, Trevenant Lantern, right? Like this is some serious spice is coming through every single tournament. We're seeing things really change. The number of Mandabuzzers is really different now than it was a month and a half ago. And so I feel like the meta is still in a really good place. And so I actually don't think that it's the right time to release a Pokemon that is going to completely change everything up. I think that we're in a spot that we can really comfortably leave Clodsire until a later move update to actually bring that powerhouse into things, whether that be on December or even 3 months later for the March 1st move update. I think that we have room to sort of play around with what we have because there's still a lot of things being discovered every single week at these Play Pokemon regionals. So personally, I'm happy to wait.
So what I'm hearing is Clodsire Perth 2024.
Yeah, you can have it back then. Once the
Yay!
Perth regional comes around, all yours, Debbie. You can run it alongside your Carbink and you just really hammer home that Carbink Clodsire core. Although
Yes.
I'll admit, Debbie, I'm not sure if Carbink is going to have a lot of places to go once you've got Gligar and and a Clodsire running around. It could be a bit scary.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you never know. Maybe Carbink will get some new moves in a future meta update, and maybe it'll just become even more relevant. Who knows? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, he's nah.
Look, I,
just to clear, like, nah.
I
It's
don't think
already.
they're looking to give it any buffs.
I don't think it's on the top of the list. If anything, at the bottom
Yeah.
of the list to buff carving.
No, the only list it's at the top of is the PV Poker rankings. I mean, once you're at that point, I don't think you need any help. But in saying that, they did give Registeel Zap Cannon that one time, and that certainly boosted its usage. So, you never know. You never know. Just have to wait and see. But there are a few other new Pokemon that have joined the game very recently. How's that for a segue? It's Shadow Pokemon, because there are a few new shadows that have joined the game. As far as Great League eligibility or Great League usefulness is the more appropriate term, we have Great League Shadow Bastiodon, Shadow Whiscash, and Shadow Haunter. Are, I think, really the three that are of interest. We saw Haunter being used on that team in the APAC championships with Accelerant using that Haunter against Rick Flareon. And so I think Haunter is a very interesting Pokemon that only gets more interesting when you throw some shadow on it. Bastiodon? I mean, it's an option.
Options are good. Whether I'd lean to that option is another thing. I don't know. It's one, like, if you're going to, like, do you know how long it took me to make a Bastio? Like, just the Excels that have to go into it. I can't imagine doing another one.
Yeah. Look, I think that if you want a Pokemon that does more damage but takes more damage, then you probably aren't picking Bastiodon. That's why something like Shadow Haunter really works because you're only increasing the just huge amount of damage it does, and you're taking more damage, but you're already like not going to survive any charge moves anyway. So I think that a Pokemon like Haunter is built to be Shadow. Pokemon like Bastiodon, I think you can probably just get one in case, but probably don't need to focus any effort on actually building it anytime soon. And Whiscash is just kind of an interesting one. Probably one worth building, but whether it becomes meta viable at some point, that'll have to be a question for down the line or some sort of limited meta at some point potentially, which, regular Whiscash is certainly useful for in some cases, but, we'll just have to wait and see. But it's not just Great League, is it, Debbie?
No. So we have Excadrill and Rhyperior, both available in shadow form and both really quite prominent in the Master League. I have a note here that says Bastiodon, but I'm not sure about that one for Master League, but I'm sure there's someone out there that will play it.
Hey, I just thought, like, now that we're in this XL zone and everyone's building these like low IV Bastiodons for Great League, maybe you can sort of like get that level 50 Hundo Bastiodon, give it some purpose, get it into the Master League. I'm pretty sure it's been done before. I can't remember which streamer actually did it, but someone was running Bastiodon in Master League trying to get some wins, and that they got some stuff on the board. Was it?
Some, okay. Was it worth it? Was it
Yeah.
worth it?
For the content?
For the content, that's it. Okay. Not
Yeah,
for the
I don't think
elo.
it's coming out. You're not going to see it on any Dracoviz graphics of top GBL teams anytime soon. We'll put it that way.
Can we get Dracoviz to like just be like Steve's recommendation of a team, because it would be so good. It'd be so good. It'd be all these like teams, and there's like Steve's Master League team.
It's just like Bastiodon, Lickitung, Metacham. Give it a go, guys. I hear Metacham Lickitung core is really strong in PvP. So here you go. The problem is that they'll probably like look at it and like people to think that Dracoviz have accidentally pasted it onto the wrong graphic. Like, oh, Steve suggested this team for Great League. And those Dracoviz guys, oh, I can't believe they've done this. But no, that's.
I don't think they'll bring their reputation down like that.
We'll just wait and see, I guess. So, maybe one day when they have to make a top 8 graphic with a Whalmer on it, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But regardless, I mean, there's also some other shadows. Like, I don't think Shadow Ramparos? How do you even say that Pokemon?
Ramparos?
Yeah, Ramparos. Oh, Rampardos. There's no vowel in between the R and the D. Rampardos. So much of this episode has been pronunciation. Anyway, I don't think anyone is bringing that to PvP.
Not PvP, but yeah, you go.
Oh, I have a rank 1 Great League one. Not a shadow, but I can tell you with all of the fingers on 0 hands how many times I've used it. It's not me.
Well,
it's not me.
Well, they might be, a small cup or something like that might be relevant. So who knows? But Rampardos was really Rampardos was really big in the PvE scene, being the best, I suppose, the best Pokemon to bring in for the rock type. So there may be some people that, still aiming for some records with raids and other things, that may be wanting to make a shadow one. So I suppose if you are trying to, take some bosses down or anything like that, it might be worth making a good one.
Not with level 50 Shadow Bastiodon for rock damage? To be clear, I was doing hard jokesies. There's no.
Oh, okay. I was like, huh?
Oh, no. Like, Bastiodon maxes out at 1741. Like, there's no illusions that it can do anything to the 3,728 that Rampardos can do.
I was just like, oh no, I didn't fact check this. Don't do this to me, Steve.
But speaking of shadows, there are 2 other Pokemon of the shadow type that are of note, not because they've just been, added to the game in this new batch, but because they're about to be eligible for the Play Pokemon circuit, that being Shadow Hisuian Sneasel and Shadow Sneasler. Now, look, I don't know if they're really exactly going to be Play Pokemon staples, but they're eligible, right? So, congrats. Woohoo!
Yeah, I mean, like, if you happen to be very lucky and got that small window from before and now you can actually use it. Otherwise, yeah, they're currently available during this Rocket event as of recording. So we potentially could see some from November 1st onwards, but otherwise, yeah, it's a interesting one to bring if you are bringing it.
Yeah, I think they're going to need to there's going to have to be some move changes before anyone's bringing Shadow Hisuian Sneasel into any Play Pokemon circuits. But you never know. Because someone like Magmarman could just come along and decide that Shadow Hisuian Sneasel is the perfect mon to fill out their team. You just never know.
What I'm hearing is coming to a Brisbane regional near you on Steve's team.
I don't think I have one. I think that might be a limiting factor.
All right, well,
And
time
no one
to
can
go
trade
out
it
there.
either. So,
On Shadow, you can't trade it.
Yeah, it's not tradable. So I need to
No.
just. Are they even like? I feel like they're not in Rockets at the moment, just based purely on anecdotal evidence. But I don't know. I don't know, Debbie.
That's okay. When you leave the house, maybe maybe you can go find out.
Oh well, I guess we'll have to go and find out. But yeah, I mean that's sort of broadly what we sort of wanted to talk about today. I mean, I guess we can go for shameless plug. I mean, it hasn't been announced. I mean, whoa, is that a Discord notification, or is that just the sound of new news coming through? That I'm just going to shameless plug. Next weekend, this I'm actually not used to shameless plug, especially not on this podcast, except my Twitter account. Follow me on Twitter, P1, where maybe by now there will have been an announcement. I'm not sure yet, but Clash of the Champions International next weekend, November 12th, or I guess Monday, November 13th, very early morning for Australian folk. International Continental Champions. Pew pew. Yeah. It's Wadaj versus Tonton versus Jakobovic versus JW Naldo. So anyway, that's a thing.
It's
So,
pretty cool. I think it'll be really good.
Yeah. So
You gotta get better at your own plug there.
yeah. Yeah.
Go follow Steve's Twitter to make him feel better. Jeez.
Yeah.
Ooh, what a way to end the podcast.
Ooh, yeah, real high note. Yeah, anyway. That's happening. Hey,
I should not have given you the controls to this.
Yeah, I got a lot of fun buttons, but you know, it is. Whoa, who knew that could come out here? We played that at the end as well, don't we? Oh, so that actually will come on in the very
I thought you were finishing. I thought you were done.
Yeah, that was like the Kane coming onto the stage and just pulling them off. It's like, oh no, they're playing the music. So follow our socials on Twittery and also on YouTube.
What are you doing?
Yeah. So follow us there and also rate us on the things. And we'll see you in the next one. Are
we redoing that?
In no universe are we redoing that.
Oh god.
Oh, this is it. So bye.
Bye.